Well, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to our special webinar today, How to Be a Successful Agent. My name is Jack Gately. Thank you so much for joining us. I see that we have a nice crowd this morning. Thank you for coming on this Saturday, 9 a.m. A little bit later, if you were taking conventional real estate school today, it would be 8 a.m. So I let you guys sleep in today, I guess. Joining you here from beautiful Nashville. That's why we play I don't know if you heard that little country music before we started, but here in a very nondescript conference room here in beautiful Nashville, and really looking forward to doing today's webinar. Thank you so much for coming. And of course, since it's not part of the normal 40-hour class and it doesn't actually count to your 40 hours, we won't be able to take, we won't take attendance, but I see that we have like a dozen people in today's webinar, which is great. Thank you so much for coming. Really glad you're here. I'll be back probably Monday morning, I guess, and we'll have real estate school next week as scheduled. I believe our first webinar next week is actually Monday night, if I'm not mistaken. And looking forward to getting back home and doing today's webinar. So as always, whenever we do the standard course, I love your questions. So at any time during the presentation you want to ask a question, I'd love to have it. Actually, let me rephrase. Actually, I do have a quick presentation I want to give to you, and then why don't you save all of your questions kind of like to the end, and then we'll do a question and answer session at the end, and you can basically ask me anything when we get kind of through a quick presentation I have set up for you today. If there's nothing else on your mind, I guess I'll just pause right here to see if anybody would like to ask a question before we get started. Anybody have a question they want to ask like right now? You can either unmute yourself, type it in, or raise your hand, just like in a standard class. Let's talk with Alonzo. Alonzo, you have your hand up. Do you want to just unmute yourself? Yes, Alonzo. How can I help you before we get started? Alonzo? Okay, Alonzo. I see that you raised your hand but didn't have a question. So maybe we can take that later for you if you're ready then. So barring anybody else, then great. Let's dive right into it. I'm just going to mute my phone here for you so that we don't get interrupted that way. That would be great. And let's dive into it. I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming. It's really nice of you to be here. Oh, we have some more people joining us now as we speak, which is fantastic. I'm going to minimize that there, and let's talk about a little bit of a reality check about being a real estate agent. I want to keep this presentation to be incredibly practical and real life for you, so let's get into that. A quick reality check when it comes to, I think a lot of people sign up for real estate school and they're, thinking about, living in mansions and selling mansions and that type of thing. But before you get there, there's a little bit of other things that is a little bit reality checkish like. So for obviously, success is not instant. Success is not instant. That's kind of a little bit of you probably already knew that, but it does require hard work and patience more than anything else. Real estate is what we call a lead business, You need the leads to be successful. Among anything else that you do in this business, generating leads is the number one thing that makes a difference between being successful and being unsuccessful, the generation of leads. What is a lead, Jack? That's a fairly obvious question. Let's answer that question for you. It can be one of two things, really. It can be someone who contacted you or someone you heard about that needs to buy or sell. So somebody might contact you, might send you a direct message, they might call you, email you, however they contact you. Or you could be sitting at the Little League game, for instance, and you could be sitting next to a mom or a dad, and they could say to you, I know Susie Q is, oh, they're having another baby and they're going to need a bigger house. So that is also a lead, assuming that you already know Susie Q, or you can get an introduction to her, or maybe you might be even bold enough to say, hey, I was talking to Mary at the Little League game the other day. Congratulations on the great news, expecting a new baby. And as you know, I sell a lot of houses in your neighborhood. I heard that you might be looking to upgrade to the next level. I'd love to be able to help you out. So it's one of two things. Either someone contacted you, which is a beautiful thing, or someone you heard about kind of through the grapevine needs to buy or sell. One of those two things is a lead. So the big question is, how do you get that? How do you make one of those two things happen? Great question. Aside from the fact that there are a significant number of people that already have that gift, I don't want to say gossip, but to know what's going on. So if you already have that gift, then that is one thing that you can definitely capitalize on. Great. I don't actually have that gift. I'm not really good at that. My wife is, and maybe she could teach that as a different webinar someday. But I don't even know how she does it. Like, she just knows everything. And for those of us who don't have that gift, this is what today's webinar is focused upon. So in my opinion, there are basically two general ways to get leads. You can buy their attention or earn their attention, or what we would used to call in politics, we would call this free media. When a politician does something that generates attention in the news, that generates free coverage for them, like that they don't have to pay for. You could probably think about, like a politician gives a speech somewhere and it's widely covered. Well, that's free media. Or you can buy your attention. Like, for instance, well, we'll get to an example of that in a minute. But you've got to get people's attention if you're going to get leads. Most new agents, that would be you folks, fall into one or both of the following traps. First, they decide that they're going to buy the attention of the consumer in order to get leads. And especially as a new agent, this can be very dangerous. You're buying Zillow, which is very expensive. You're sending out mailers. You're buying a billboard. There's literally like countless different ways you can spend money in this business. There's this thing called the agent wallet. And as soon as you get licensed, you're probably going to get bombarded by a list of people contacting you so that you can spend money with them, because they all know that you have a very simple problem that a lot of other agents, especially new agents, have: how to generate leads. It's extremely tempting to spend money with these folks. I'd be careful of that, because sooner or later, especially as a new agent, you might not be as adept at converting those leads. Maybe you are, but most people aren't. Or you don't know how to buy Zillow the way it's effective for you, or you don't know the market, so the people that you're generating the leads, you're not meeting their expectation. But a lot of people that do that route, especially in the beginning, they run out of money. You got to remember the number one reason why new businesses fail, whether it's a restaurant or whatever, hardware store, landscaper, they're undercapitalized. They don't have enough cash. That's probably most of us, right? Or some of you at least. You don't have enough money to actually start the business. So you got to figure out another way. Second thing that a lot of agents do is they spend too much time, because at some agencies they require you to take a boatload of trainings, or they spend too much money, because at some agencies, Keller Williams, they actually make you pay for the training because they think they have to do it to be successful. And I really can't stress this one enough. I think all of you are smart enough to realize that, maybe coming out of the gate and spending $1,200 a month on Zillow might not be the best choice. I think a lot of you already figured that out. But I think this seduction of the trainings is something that we don't really talk about that much in real estate industry. And people get kind of seduced. I think that's a really good way to think about it, into saying, oh, I got to do this training, I got to do that training. And I can't really stress the importance of this slide here. In reality, people do trainings to distract themselves from what they already know what they should be doing. And they say, oh, like they use it as a crutch, as an excuse. I shouldn't like go out and do the actual thing I need to do. No, I should really do that other training, right? It's a distraction. And they know they need to go out and generate leads, but instead it's more comfortable to sit in a conference room with some people and laugh and listen to some speaker like you're doing today. Hopefully today will be fairly painless, and it's also completely free. But you know what you should already be doing, but you're not quite doing it because you just don't have the courage to do it. But this, a lot of people have the idea of getting a real estate license, like lots of people. The difference is in the execution. The difference is in the execution. Are you actually going to do what it takes to be successful? And whether you spend too much time or spend too much money, in the end, everyone runs out of time and money if you go through those two routes. And of course, people quit. Just like any business, whenever you start restaurant or a sneaker business or a clothing line or insurance company, whatever, most people that start a small business, which is what you're doing, fail. They quit. And the point of this whole webinar is to kind of make sure that that doesn't happen. The real question in my, looking at it, and you guys I love your questions in the question and answer period that comes after here, is how do you build a sustainable business? How are you going to build a business where you're not a slave to buying Zillow ads or anything like that? How does that work? And that's where I want to kind of focus our efforts for this webinar here. The number one thing, in my opinion, in order to be successful in this business is patience. And this is a very difficult thing because a lot of you are rah, let's get into real estate, let's make some deals. But I think the number one attribute that you need to be successful is to have patience. And patience can come from the fact, right, you may have heard me say this, by putting yourself in a position to win. And now this is especially applicable to agents who want to be residential agents selling single family homes or condos, also commercial agents. I would say less so to rental agents, Rental agents, you can start making money fairly quickly as a rental agent. And so I would not say that this would be applicable to rental agents. But if you're in commercial real estate or residential real estate, the best way to kind of think about your own personal finances is not to count on any money from real estate for the foreseeable future. No income, not a penny. In fact, you might even think about it as a loss for the foreseeable future. That would be the best way to think about it. If you're making a budget for this year or this 6 months or the next quarter, put a big fat zero, the donut, down for the amount of income that you're going to make on real estate. And by doing that, you're going to give yourself a lot of freedom to be successful. Now, I'm not saying that goals are bad. Goals are good. You should have some goals. What I'm just saying is that you should stretch them out so that you give yourself enough time to make them reality. And in doing so, you kind of have to look at your current financial situation, which only you know. How much do I need to make a month? What are my expenses? What are the expenses that are on the, fairly near horizon? How much money do I feel comfortable about having in my bank account? All of those types of questions, and make sure that you're already generating all of that money through some other activity other than real estate, so that if you happen to make money from real estate, it's a bonus. It's not something that you're counting on. And, you should probably definitely take a look at your monthly expenses if you haven't already done that, and then kind of reverse engineer it to figure out, okay, how many houses would it take me to quit my current job a year? Or how many closings in the pipeline would make me feel secure? Do I need to have six in the pipeline, or to what feeling that I would feel comfortable about my economic future? And that's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be different for everybody. When you have low expectations of basically making no money, that's going to give you the freedom to fail, because at the beginning, you might not be good at this. You might not call that client back when you should have. You might not have recommended the right type of property that they were looking at, and they lost faith in you. You might not have handled that phone call the way you should have and the way you will in a year or 2 or 3 or 5 years from now. You might screw some things up in the beginning. And if you have very low expectations to be successful, that'll be okay. You can trip and fall and get back up. And the freedom of having very low expectations, or basically zero expectations, will give you the freedom to be patient. And that's what it takes to be successful in this business. And my feeling is that almost as if like the little that you need it, how do I want to say this? The least that you need this to be successful, the better off you are. That was not as eloquent as I had hoped, but I think you know what I mean. That this is the chances of you being successful in this, I think, directly correspond to the fact, or indirectly correspond to the amount that you need it to be successful. If you're desperate for it to be successful, it's probably not going to be successful, because you're not going to have the freedom to be patient. And eventually, if you don't have that freedom, you'll feel the pressure to quit. The economic pressure, or you'll just get tired of it, or you're just going to say nobody's successful. There's a boatload of excuses, which I don't even want to get into right now. But if you don't have that framework to be patient to begin with, eventually, for one of those reasons, peer pressure, grandma says it's not successful, you'll listen to other people, you'll look at your bank account, and you'll feel the pressure to quit. I'd rather give you a roadmap to build a much longer-term brand for yourself, and that's the solution that I'm proposing today. And this is predicated on completely you. I don't sell any products, or I don't sell any of the future class or nothing. So this is just a roadmap that I've developed for me using other resources on the internet, some of which I'll reference today. And this roadmap, I believe, is the longer road to hoe. But I believe through it, you can build a brand in your niche, whether it's a commercial real estate niche or a residential real estate niche. And this brand can be tremendously powerful. So my solution to you is a two-part step, or two-part solution. You got to ask for the business, and then you've got to create content. So the first part is actually tremendously old school. Ask and create, lead generation in marketing. That's what we're talking about today. When I was in politics 20-something years ago, we had this phrase, you are your list. You are your list. And you would never let it out of your sight, because back then it really wasn't computerized like it was today. It was like a printed massive piece of paper, like, coming out of this old-fashioned mainframe computer. And you would never print more than 1 or 2 copies. And if you would never give it to anybody you didn't trust, it never left the campaign office. You are your list. Those are all the people that support you. And so what you need to go do is really kind of think about this as running for office. Think of you running for office in whatever city or town that you're in. You probably first start with a list of your supporters. And doing that in real estate is the exact same thing. You need to sit down at the kitchen counter. If you have a significant other or somebody else in your family, a friend or whatever that they can help you with this, great. Get out Google Sheets and make a really simple database. First name, last name, address, email, phone number, and I like to include whether or not they're a Facebook friend. Really simple database. You might first just start with the names and then fill in the other information. Now, a lot of agencies are going to offer you a free database for you to enter your list into their database. Now, if you do that and you use their fancy database instead of the rather boring Google Sheets, which is free, who has your list now? Anybody wants to answer that? It's a pretty obvious question. And anybody want to just unmute themselves? You can unmute yourself and just blurt that out, or you can type it in if whatever you want. And it's pretty obvious, right? Who has your list? Anybody want to help me out there? No? The agency has your list. And now you don't have control of it. So if you leave that agency in 2, 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, you have now given them a copy of your list. Because it's not like they're going to scrub it from their database when you decide to move on. Hell no. They're going to try to execute on your list. And they're probably going to execute it with a lot more resources than you yourself have. So if you use the company database, you're giving them your number one asset, which is everybody you know. And I cannot stress how, what's the word I want to use, stupid that is. Do not give away your list. You are your list. Don't use the company database. So what you really need to do is sit down, as we mentioned a minute ago, and actually put people on your list. Names first, as we talked about. And you got to call them up, and this is definitely the harder part, and ask a really simple question. You might want to write this down. Who do they know that is buying or selling in the next 30 days? I wrote this really big so you can see it. And notice how we're asking this question. We're asking this question in a way that says, hey, who do they know? Not if they are buying and selling, because the chances of that are actually kind of slim. There's a much better chance that they know somebody that's buying or selling in the next 30 days. A lot of people have really tough time making this phone call. I'm going to tell you right now that this is the number one determining factor of whether or not you're going to be a successful agent in the last, since forever, for decades. And if this sounds like really old-fashioned, advice you'd get if you worked at an insurance company in 1957, it's because it is. Now, the good thing is that you're not asking them to spend money with you. You're not selling them an insurance policy or a magazine subscription or anything like that. You're just looking for a referral. So it's actually an easier phone call. You're just looking for some help with your business. Who do they know that is buying or selling in the next 30 to 90 days? This is the money question. And if we also reference back to the fact that, a lot of agents fail. A lot of agents fail because they don't want to make this call. And so instead, as I mentioned earlier, they'll go sit in some training for some motivational speaker or some bullshit instead of sitting at their kitchen counter and making these phone calls. They won't do the hard part. They'll go do the make me feel happy part at a conference room, but they won't do this hard part sitting by themselves in the kitchen making the phone call. Now, you could kind of update this to send a direct message or a text message or something like that. You can make a personalized video, which is pretty cool. But I would first, before I did any of that, I would make the phone call. And again, Sally, who do you know that's buying or selling in the next 30 to 90 days? I know some of you, especially you younger people, you're like, this is a generational thing where younger people don't tend to like the phone as much. I get that, but I think in the initial process, the phone call is better. Or if you want to do FaceTime or something, that's fine. But I think it is helpful for people to actually hear your voice a one-on-one, whether it's through FaceTime or whatever, rather than just kind of like a text message, which they can blow off. Hey, Bob, I'm starting my real estate career. Could you help me out? Who do you know that's buying or selling in the next 30 to 90 days? Now, over the course of the year, you probably have to ask Bob 4 or 5 times so you can mix it up. You call him once, and you keep track of that in your Google Sheets, and then the next time you just drop him a DM or a text message or something like that over time. Do not mail people. Mailing costs money. That's going back to the first thing you don't want to do. You don't want to spend money. You don't want to do that. Mail costs money. Plus, nobody reads it. You've got to come up with something that's sustainable or almost every day. Now, part 2, which is the create part. The create part is so critically important because when you're making these phone calls, people are going to ask, who's Kevin, an agent? Oh, I know Kevin. Really, does he know anything about real estate? I don't know. So in the internet world, before they call you back or before that referral trusts you, they're going to look you up and they're going to find out if you're for real. If you know anything about real estate, or you said just somebody's brother-in-law who got their license. So you've got to create content and you've got to distribute it. There are basically 3 ways to communicate. You can write. Some of you might be fantastic writers. You could do photo, or you can do video. Now, I do kind of a little bit of each, but definitely more video. I'm a more video type of person. I think it has more impact, and I like the video, but some of you might be much better writers than I am, or maybe you can do things with photography and or memes or whatever that's better than anybody. Whatever one of those 3 methods that works for you. If you're proficient in all 3, then good for you. I think it also is very, very important that your website, if you even have one, nobody's going to your website. The content that you produce, I think we all understand, has to be native to the platform, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. It's going to be native to the platform. If you're trying to drive people off those platforms to your website, that's not going to work. You've got to distribute on the platform. There are all sorts of ideas for what type of content you could create. I have a general rule about the content that I create for generating real estate leads, and that's about 75% of it is non-real estate content. And then maybe 1 out of 4 is real estate content. So I think, by the way, just a quick note here, there's a huge hole in the local news business. You probably noticed that the internet has basically destroyed your local newspaper. There are tons of stories locally that you could be covering that the local newspaper is not covering. And you can do it in a way that's like a feature that promotes other people, and you can then leverage their social network. And you should pick something that's incredibly important. You should pick something that is a topic that interests you and especially interests your target market. So if you're talking about horse racing and your target market is not interested in it, then that's no good. I think there's tons of things in your local city or town that have a lot of interest, whether they should put a traffic light up or whatever those topics are in your local city or town. There's boatloads of those things out there. Your really goal is not necessarily to be always talking about real estate, but to be known, to be micro famous in your niche, whether that's geographic or whatever it happens to be. And again, obviously, to do that, you got to be patient. I want to show you a really quick Gary Vee content model. Some of you might be aware of Gary Vee, and let's bring it up here on the page here. Give me a quick second. It's a very simple content model, and this is my recommendation to you, that instead of trying to create boatloads of content, you create one great piece of content a week. That's it, one. And I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to give you some real life examples of those in just a second. And then you dice it like an onion over the course of the week. Just like he says here, my model is structured on a reverse pyramid. I use one piece of pillar content, a vlog or whatever it is, and then I allow my team to analyze it and repurpose it into dozens of other little pieces of content that basically he sprinkles over the course of the week. It's a lot like, let's see if we can get this, it's a lot like having an onion. No one is going to eat your whole onion. Nobody is going to eat a whole onion. They're not going to bite into it like an apple. But if you dice it up over time, they will consume it in tiny little pieces if you sprinkle it over the course of the week. And that's what I want you to think about your content. Don't get upset if nobody reads your content or your whole blog post or something like that. Nobody's going to read it. But if you dice it up into memes or quotes or little sound bites, then you distribute it over all your social networks, now you're talking about it. And for my feeling, the home buying public, and especially focused on people that are buying and selling real estate in the residential market, if you want to reach people 35 plus, you're going to be on Facebook. And especially on Facebook groups. Instagram is really good, but if you want to reach people that are 35, 45, 55, 65, they are on Facebook. Now, some of you on the internet here that are younger, you under 30 people are be like, Facebook? Facebook's dead. Nobody goes on. Only my mom goes on Facebook. Exactly. And they're the ones that buy and sell real estate. They're the ones that buy and sell real estate. I really want to show you exactly what we're talking about here in a couple of pieces of content that I made on my Facebook page, which I'm pretty sure I have not distributed to you, and is slowly, here we go, just load it up here. So this is a video, which we won't watch or anything, but I made back in November, I think, and I heard on Facebook that this guy, Dan Raposa, who's a local photographer, who I've met, I think, at the coffee shop downtown, like once. And he asked me to do a drone job, to fly a drone for a job before he even had a drone. When nobody had a drone, he asked me to fly it. And it didn't work out, but I was his Facebook friend, and I noticed on Facebook that he had published a book about Plymouth, and he found all these historical photographs. And then he went back and took the picture today, as it was today. And I called him up and I said, hey, Dan, you might not remember me from Facebook. I saw that you just published this new book. I see that you don't have any media coverage on it. Dan, I'd love to interview you for Facebook. And he was like, yeah, I'll do that. And I interviewed him, I don't know, like a 9-minute interview. I read the book. It was a picture book, so I was able to read it. And and he loved it. This video got almost 2,000 views on Facebook. Did it get 2,000 views on my page? Hell no. I shared it to Facebook groups. So in my town, Plymouth, there's like 4 or 5 groups. One of them has 43,000 members. And when you share it to those pages, these posts like this get amazing amount of traction. This post here has 7 shares. Now, only 1 comment on my personal page. All the comments and everything happen on the Facebook groups. Now, for those of you who say you don't have any network, you can't build a list, I want to give you a little clue here. This is a pro tip. Pro tip on a pro tip here. What you do is you create content like this, and you get a boatload of people to comment on it on the Facebook groups, and then you friend those people. Ooh, Jack, that is a really good idea. If that could be a test question, that would be a test question. If you create this content, then you can then friend these people, and they're going to be super happy to have you as a friend because you're creating great content in your city or town. So I'm just going to play this video here in the background if I can. This is a video I made down in Plymouth, and I think there's his little jaggedy there. In Plymouth, a whale washed up on the beach in Plymouth, and it struck me as a really simple thing that I could go down and make a video of this. I made this with my really nice camera, but you could have easily made this video with your basic phone and a basic editing for free. You could have made it on your phone completely with a basic editing software like iMovie on your phone. And as you can see, there's a giant whale bone. I walked down there, gave it a little suspense, and it's a 2-minute video. This has over almost 3,000 views, 18 shares, dozens and dozens and dozens of comments, and also everybody that comments is a great opportunity. I can friend them back. Maybe not like immediately, but the next day or something, I can friend them back, and I can grow my base and my influence so that when I do post that real estate content, once out of every 4, once out of every 5, I have grown my audience. And that's helpful. And so that I'm seeping in slowly as a personality, as a brand, as somebody to want to know. And also, when they need me, they know in the background subliminally that I'm also a real estate agent in town. That takes a much longer time, but it's also basically completely free if you have the patience and the hustle to do it. So I think we're ready for your questions. I think I've outlined, kind of a 2-part strategy there to provide, how do I want to say this, a database to ask people, for their business and for referrals, more importantly, and then a way for people to justify giving you that referral through the social proof of creating one great piece of content. So even with that whale video, let's just follow up with that whale video. With this whale video, not only do I have the video itself, but I can also chop that into, or while I'm there, I can take photos. While I'm there, I can do all sorts of things to create Instagram content, because video on Instagram is not as big as it used to be. Or even with this particular video that we're making right now, as you know, I'm recording it because I'm pretty sure it says that on your screen. But I'll probably chop up little sections of this video for like micro content. And remember, I understand no one's going to eat my onion, but they will eat it if I dice it up. All right, we do have a nice big crowd, and you stayed for the whole presentation. That's very nice. That's very nice. I don't know if you would stay or not. So I'll pause here, and I'll be glad to take anybody's question about basically anything to do with what we just talked about in today's webinar. And for those of you who are new, you can ask questions in one of 3 ways. You can just unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand, or you can type it in. Jack, how do I raise my hand? Near the microphone button to the upper right-hand corner, there's a microphone button there, and slightly underneath that is a hand icon that looks like this. There's also an orange arrow on your interface, and you can slide that out, and there's a little drop-down menu. You can type something in that way. Now's the time. If you have a question, you want to ask me a question, comment, or concern, anything at all, very happy to hear from you. Oh, we do have one question, okay. Mark says, can we get a copy of the slides? I think so, Mark, Alonzo, rather. Definitely the video will be available. I haven't really thought about the slides, but maybe that's another piece of content. And so definitely the video will be available. And I'll make an effort to make the content, to make the slides also available. Thank you for that suggestion. That's a good suggestion. That's another piece of content. Zenon, you have a question. Go right ahead. Just unmute yourself.
Hey, Jack. Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for the information. It's very helpful. A few
Thank you.
things I feel very helpful to me personally. Thank you. I like to ask one question on like for most people here, going to be starting with the first case or first closing, I guess, going to be very critical and hard. So like it's building the trust, like because when you do it, people are gonna ask, oh, how many closings you had? You're gonna 0, right? So like how to build up a trust, like to kind of eliminate people's concerns that you've never done this before.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and that's why I think for many of you that those first couple of leads are going to come from people that already know you and already know that you're a trustworthy person. You might not know your real estate quite yet, but that you're an honest and trustworthy person. And to them, that's going to be the most important thing. So just like most things, the first people that are going to trust you to handle this are probably going to be people that know you already. In the other flip side, though, you can always, hopefully, if you pick the right agency, you can reassure them that your broker is going to be with you the whole time, that your broker is actually going to handle most of the transaction. And so that has to do with the agency you choose. Is the agency you choose just kind of throw you out there and see how it goes, or are they really going to support you in the transaction? There are other agencies too where they don't even allow you to really represent clients for a while. Instead, you kind of tag along with somebody for a period of time. I'm not a big fan of that model because I think it stunts your growth, so to speak. I'd rather see you get out representing clients yourself as soon as possible and not really apprenticed. I think that is almost akin to doing too many trainings. If you're apprenticing for a week or whatever, that might be fine. But you apprentice for 3 or 6 months before you can actually do your own. I think that's a crock of I don't like that plan. I'm not a big fan of that plan. I want to see you get out there and represent as many clients as you possibly can, generating those leads yourself, seeing that income yourself. That would be my plan. And it'd be great if you could, when people say, hey, I'm not very expert in this, say, but I will have my broker standing by. In fact, if you want to talk to my broker, or my lead agent, or whoever it is. Plus, if you're creating that weekly content, then they should, like we just talked about, if you're creating that weekly content, then they should feel more comfortable. That weekly content is supposed to verify that you do know what you're talking about, even if it's just the beginning of your career.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Joe says, if you're new to real estate and using this plan to generate long-term wealth, how do new real estate agents deal with the fact that they're new? Actually, I think Joe, we just answered that question, but you're new. Some people are actually going to feel that they're going to give you a break because you're new, by the way. Hey, and just don't try to hide it. Hey, I want to let you know that I'm new in the business. I got into it because I thought it could be done better. Ooh, that's a great angle. right? That's a great angle. I thought it could be done better. You know me because I'm Mrs. O'Leary's neighbor, and you know my parents, or because most of the people that trust you in the beginning are going to trust you because they somehow know you, and also because you're creating that content. And so lean on the fact that you're new. As I used to say in politics, and everybody says this in politics, make your weakness your strength. Yeah, I'm new, so I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I don't know about you, but I don't really think that agents up to now have been doing things as ethically or as straightforward as they. I don't know if I'd use the word ethically. I don't think I really am a super fan about how real estate is being done, and so I want to do it a different way, a new way. Maybe I can earn your trust. Yeah, just spin it. Make it your biggest strength. How to connect with the under 30 crowd population because they will soon be buying and selling soonish. That is true, absolutely. And if you want to connect, then you've got to create content, in my opinion, that you're going to meet them where they are, which is probably on what? Instagram, probably much more on Instagram, maybe on TikTok. I don't know. I'm not under 30. I don't know. So what do I know who these under 30 people pay attention? No, I think that you've got to create content in a way that they consume content. So you might want to go a little bit more towards the meme creation and not so much, the 30,000 word, blog post, written blog post. You want to meet them where they are with the type of content which I think that they would consume natively on whatever platform they're on. Look for trends about how other people are communicating with under 30. Of course, if you're under 30, you'll probably have an advantage in that too, because this will just come second nature to you, right? TikTok for my daughter, she's 13. TikTok is like she operates TikTok like you can't believe. It just comes second nature to her. So sometimes, generationally, these things will be an advantage one way or another. They're just gonna have an advantage one way or the other. So dive into it, investigate, practice, try things out. Is it true that you have to be a sales agent to show an apartment? Ruth, I just got this question the other day from somebody else too. Whenever you work for a fee for another, you must be licensed. So yeah, if you want to show apartments or show real estate of any type and you're expecting a compensation, then you must be licensed, yes. For a fee for another. Where will this video be available? Well, we'll probably post it to the Facebook group for the Real Estate School Facebook group, and so it'll be there, and it'll probably be on my main YouTube channel as well. And maybe I might embed it on the career page that we have in the online real estate classroom as well. But it'll be out there definitely. And if you're not following me on Facebook and or YouTube, please go right ahead, please. Oh, Joe, no problem at all. So I beat you to the punch there. Anybody else with a question, comment, concern, anything at all? Oh, Sabrina, that's very nice of you to say. This is a great webinar. Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad you took something of value from it, and it was nice to kind of do a special, shorter term Saturday webinar rather than the long. We'll be getting back to that. Don't worry about it. But it's been kind of nice to do a shorter one. But does anybody else want to ask any question, comment, or concern? Very happy to. Oh, look at that. I just got a friend request. Hey, thanks, Joe. I'll have to think about it, though. I'll have to think about that one. You might not get an answer right away. But see, that's how it's done, right? Very good. Anybody else question, comment, concern? Zenon's like, yeah, I'm all stocked up on the 5-something webinars, 5-hour webinars, 5-hour plus. Anybody else question, comment, concern? If not, then I think we'll probably call it a day. And I'm really glad you were here. And I actually had a kind of a crisis in getting this little conference room, which I didn't line up until last night because the Wi-Fi at my hotel which is just right over there, was a little on the fritz. So I had to go to the next hotel over to make sure that this went well. So, hey, thank you from Nashville. I'll be back in Boston very early Monday morning, and we'll see y'all next week. Have a great weekend. If you're going to be watching the football games this weekend, there's a Tennessee Titans are in the playoffs, unfortunately, because our Patriots did not win last weekend. So I'm sure there'll be some football party that I'll probably go to later today. Hey, thanks very much. We'll see you next week. I think we have class Monday night. Webinar invites will go out, as always, on Monday. They might not go out in the morning, but they'll go out on sometime on Monday. Thank you. I will. Looking forward to being back home. And I'm glad you're here today. And we'll get this thing posted up. Kara, it probably won't be posted up immediately. So probably early next week, we'll get it posted up for you. Thank you for coming, and have a great Saturday. Bye-bye.